I don't know, maybe it's something about being locked in close quarters with sweaty men that really does it for me.
Welcome to the Rewind Classic Movies podcast about 80s and 90s movies we probably saw as kids, even if we weren't old enough to fully understand the adult themes. I'm GB, and with me is my co-host, AJ.
Hi, I am indeed AJ, and it's a pleasure to be here. Today we're going to be looking at Crimson Tide, a film about two stubborn men, one a by-the-book Navy captain, the other a Harvard first officer who ate the art of war for breakfast. They spend the entire movie arguing about whether to launch nukes while all trapped on a submarine and somehow making it look like the fate of the world depends on their egos. Gareth.
Sounds about right. Directed by the late Tony Scott, Crimson Tide was his 8th film after an incredibly successful run of movies, which included Top Gun, Beverly Hills Cop 2, Days of Thunder, Last Boy Scout, and True Romance. Made for around $53 million, it went on to make over $157 million worldwide.
That's massive.
They should make more movies for $53 million. It, of course, features the great Denzil Washington opposite the late, great Gene Hackman. And we deliberately chose this as a tribute to the man and his career. It's a much-loved movie with positive reviews and was nominated for 3 Academy Awards for film editing, sound and sound editing, but didn't win any of them. AJ, what's your history with this movie?
I genuinely don't have any memory of when I first saw it, or how many times I've also seen it since, and I'll come back to that in a bit as well. It certainly wasn't at the cinema. It was probably on DVD, I'd imagine, or maybe on TV, or I don't know, I know it probably wasn't streaming. It was before streaming, but it might have been, on a DVD or on TV, I would imagine. And I had a memory of this film being pretty epic and more of a battle of wits and not like an all-out action shoot-'em-up film. But it still does actually deliver plenty of action. There's plenty of action, bang for your buck, as well as really, really good dialogue in this film. What about you?
Before we move on to me, when you say you're not sure how many times you've seen it, am I to take that you've seen it several times?
And yes, I mean, I think so. Right, and again, I'm going to touch on this later because there's a talking point sort of based on that and why I'm not really sure how many times I've seen it, or okay. I've definitely seen it, but I couldn't tell you a number.
Well, I can't tell you when I last saw it. And to be entirely honest, I don't know if I've ever seen it. It's one of those movies I always feel like I've seen.
Yeah.
But I really can't tell. I couldn't have told you anything about it before I went in. I went into this with pretty much no baggage, or nostalgia, and zero expectations. But
wicked.
Watching this, I would have said this was a movie from before 1995. I don't know why. It has like a timeless quality about it.
Fair enough. I mean, maybe because it's got Hunt for Red October vibes.
So I was interested to watch this because I know you raved about it.
But I don't know if I raved about it. I said it was a good. I didn't go, whoa, this is. I definitely said this is I know it was a solid Gene Hackman film. That much I can tell you.
I got positive vibes from you when we discussed doing it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we did talk about doing The French Connection.
We did, but I just thought it was a little bit too old.
Yes, because we were 80s and 90s. We'll break that rule at some point.
We're obviously going to.
Let's talk about the start of the movie.
Go on then.
Never has there been a more relevant opening text on a film 30 years after it was made than this. The film starts with the words, the 3 most powerful... They don't talk about it, it's just text on screen, but I'll do the voice.
Who is it? Is it Mutter?
Riggs. The 3 most powerful men in the world. The President of the United States, the President of the Russian Republic, and... the captain of a US nuclear missile submarine. I watched this before you, and I immediately text you because this is bonkers to read on a film from 3 decades ago in 2025.
It is. It's 25 years old because it was filmed in 95, I think. Was it not 25? Or was it?
What year are we now?
No, we're 2025 now, aren't we? So it was 30 years. Oh, God, yeah, 30 years. I thought it was... I read something, it's 25, yeah.
The maths on that.
We'll edit that bit of shit maths out, yeah.
I'm keeping that in. Fuck. Right. But yeah, what did you think about that opening text?
I mean, we might as well be watching, like, the current affairs news broadcast watching the opening of that film. And I suddenly realised that I may have opened, like, a political can of worms choosing this film, given the current state of affairs. You know? I mean, there's lines from the reporter on the aircraft carrier saying like, the Russian president authorized the bombing of rebel positions. It's like, ooh, fucking hell, that's relevant. You know, what has always been a good standard of like news reporting to set the narrative of the film, this time it's definitely hitting a bit close to home.
It's crazy. Crazy.
Yeah.
And then we go from that opening into this news report you're talking about, where there's civil war in Russia, the rebels are taking control of the nukes, and the world's very afraid. There's this very tense setup. Then we cut to Denzil Washington at a kid's birthday party where he's forgotten to charge his camcorder.
And then Aragon crops up with a massive crew cut. And I was kind of expecting Rhys Davies to pop up and say, "And you have my axe."
Oh, we'll talk about Aragon in a minute, I think. But then we get to the first proper scene in this movie where we've got Denzil and Hackman opposite each other, giving us a first taster of this like acting masterclass as the elder one recruits the younger one to be his XO, and they go out and prepare to shoot first in their nuclear gunfight. No, it's very true. You got that scene where after he's introduced them to the crew as the new XO, and they're sort of walking down the corridor, and sort of he's leading the charge of them all, and they're saying, yeah, this captain really knows his stuff. He landed the SEALs in Panama in '89, and they're just listing off all the different things he's done on submarines in a theatre of war. Like, this guy knows his shit. Really setting the scene of who Gene Hackman is and what he does. Yeah, he almost doesn't need it. Like this guy could establish a character like that.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about how this movie came to be. This is based on a true story. Back in the 60s, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, there was a similar incident. You had a Soviet sub had found itself out of contact with Moscow for like several days, quite deep. And they were trying to get past this US Navy blockade, and then they were just being battered by depth charges, apparently, and thought World War III had broken out between America and the Soviet Union. So the captain and another guy on board, they would like, we're going to nuke the US. But there's this other guy, I think he was a second in command, objected and forced them to the surface to contact Moscow, etc., etc. But that wasn't how this movie was pitched originally. Do you know about this story?
No, I don't. No, not at all.
So when the studio first sort of got in touch with the Navy to try and get them on board to film, the Navy were led to believe that the movie was going to be a cross between The Hunt for Red October and 2001: A Space Odyssey, and about a submarine crew trying to stop a ship's computer from launching nukes and starting World War III.
I'm sorry, Dave. I can't let you launch those nuclear missiles.
So the Navy like allowed them in and on board and to do some filming and bits initially to try and prove to the studio executives that it wasn't a possible kind of storyline, and that, you know, we'll let you in just so you can shut it down, kind of thing. So
it's a bit like War Games in a way. I mean, you know, that had a similar sort of premise of you know, a computer that can suddenly take over the. Have you not seen War Games? Matthew Broderick.
Mate, if I have, it's a bit like this. I feel like I've seen it, but I may not have.
Would you like to play a game of chess?
Sneakers. Now there's a movie we've got to do.
Yeah, right.
Hang up the phone. Terrible.
What's in the box? Sorry, sidetracked.
Like, let's talk about the cast and the acting and directing. Starting with, we can't start with anyone else, Gene Hackman. Now, my first thought of him will always be Lex Luthor.
Now, that's interesting, because I didn't realise he was Lex Luthor. Or at least it's been so long since I've seen Superman. How bad is that? That's really bad. I'm sorry.
He's brilliant in that. I think he nails that kind of smart but sort of stupid, evil villain really brilliantly.
He's always played this kind of character actor part, a little bit like Tommy Lee Jones, maybe, that sort of gruff old man, not being horrible or nasty about it, just quite a gruff old man. And I think it was masterful casting in this film for getting him in, for sure.
Do you know what I love about old movies is you can have leading men with receding hairlines.
Yes, there's hope for me yet.
Well, both of us. We're both wearing hats, baby.
I know, right? Why do you think that is? It's not for style.
Style is not something we're often associated with. Denzil Washington accepted the role opposite Gene Hackman because he wanted the opportunity to be in there jousting with a master.
That's amazing.
Oh, you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I can't fault either of their performances. I think they are absolutely wonderful. They're not Oscar-worthy performances because, in a way, they're too good and too subtle and too realistic. That's the beauty of it, isn't it? They're just being authentic, realistic portrayals of these characters to tell the story.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. I don't think there's anything overly masterful about their performances. I think they were just very, very good performances. It's funny, Denzil Washington, I watched him last night, actually, or the night before, for the first time in Gladiator 2. And it was, to be honest, it was about the only decent bit of Gladiator 2. I thought it was a waste of space. But I didn't think he's not aged at all, apart from just being a bit grey. I don't think he looks any different at all, which is mental considering this was 30 years ago, as we discussed earlier.
Yeah, it's a bit like Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, fully. It's mental.
And Viggo Mortensen crops up in this.
Right.
Aragorn himself. And he's almost 40 in this. I Googled how old he was. He's almost 40.
That's insanity.
Yeah. And what drives me mad, that's not the right phrase, what I find incredible is, what blows my mind, that's what I was going for,
there you go.
Was that in 6 years, this guy is going to be going on to be one of the most iconic lead actors in a trilogy like Lord of the Rings.
Right.
It's just so average looking in this and no real star quality.
There's no huge acting chops or anything. I mean, all right, he sweats a bit and smokes a lot of cigarettes, and that's about it, really.
You wouldn't pick him out of a lineup to go Hollywood star.
Yeah, or, yes, man, put him in some leather and grow his hair out and give him a big sword.
Tell you what, when he looks ruggedly handsome like Aragorn, I'd let him have my big sword.
God, I'd let him touch my ring as well.
God. Rewind Classic Movies X-rated. Got very homoerotic. And the difference in technology, the thing that makes Viggo Mortensen makes me think of is the technology that makes these two movies wildly different. This is all very much like real sets, real practical lighting, and Lord of the Rings is anything but. And it's the same for the acting styles for me. Like the way they act is in this down to earth and grounded, and Lord of the Rings, it's a fantasy movie. Of course, it's going to be more in that direction, but they're so wildly different. Like, how has filmmaking changed so much in 6 years? That is right, isn't it? I've not made a horrendous error here and gone 6 years when it's 20.
I remember it when
it's 95 for this and like 2001 for Lord of the Rings.
It must have been around it was the early noughties when Lord of the Rings came out. I couldn't put a date on it without Googling. So it must be 6 or 7 years. I mean, it's not a huge amount of time, and Viggo Mortensen's now sort of 45, 46 kind of thing when he was filming that. It's amazing.
One other person I feel like we should talk about, just because of who he is, I haven't got much to say about him, but James Gandolfini, almost underused in this, but that's probably because we know what he can do and how big he's been in other things. I
think this is one of his earlier roles, possibly. I don't think it was he'd done a lot of stuff before this. I didn't actually know his name off the top of my head when I saw him. I said, literally, that's the Sopranos bloke, which is amusing because I've never seen the Sopranos either. I just know he was in the Sopranos. He was in, he's been in a lot of things, obviously. He's a very, very good actor, but he's specifically in the film In the Loop, where he plays a general, I think. And that's the film spin-off of In the Thick of It, which is a brilliant political comedy. But yeah, very, very good.
It'd be another 4 years until he did Sopranos.
Okay, how about that? Yeah, I mean, that was huge, wasn't it?
Yeah. Quick word about Tony Scott.
Yep.
Brilliant. Just a brilliant director, just constantly and consistently brilliant. I almost surprised he did another military movie less than 10 years after Top Gun.
Yeah.
You don't want to get put in that box, as the military movie guy.
I don't know. I mean, the thing is, it's action, right? It's what he does. I mean, he's very much like the James Bay kind of style of directing.
James Bay?
Is it James? Is it not James Bay? Michael Bay. It's James Bay's a singer, isn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
Michael Bay. Oh, you know what I mean. We'll edit that bit out.
No chance.
No chance we're going to leave that one. There's a howler. All right. James Bay. James Blunt. It's a very James Blunt style of directing. Basically, what I'm saying is you keep throwing budget at action compared to his brother, who's slightly more nuanced and develops the scenes and the sort of background and things like that. And this is what I want to get to, the possible controversial opinion. But I feel like every Tony Scott film, like Top Gun, True Romance, Man on Fire, which was also Denzel Washington, I could watch, and I don't mean this badly, I could watch it but instantly forget 90% of the story, and then watch it again maybe a year later and enjoy it as the romping action it is. All right, and then probably forget it again and watch it again in the future. You can't do that with Gladiator or Blade Runner. You remember those films and they stick with you. Whereas,
I don't want to watch Blade Runner again.
Yeah, I know, right? Or listen to the soundtrack in your car. And this is why I don't think I can remember when I first saw it or how many times I've seen it, because, and I don't mean it badly at all, because they're great. He does great action movies, but I don't think they're particularly memorable.
Oh, I can hear the people in our Patreon comments going mad at you now, because I know there are some Tony Scott fans in there.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's just lost us loads of money, mate.
It's just an opinion. Yeah, I have a lot of them.
He hasn't made a bad film, though, has he?
No, God, no, not at all. Not at all. I don't think there's a single bad Tony Scott film out there. Whereas there's a couple of Ridley Scott films which aren't the best. You know what I mean? Whereas Tony Scott has always made bangers. It's true.
In terms of like the actors and the directing, it's just great to watch actors in the scene and not overact and not like destroy it with quick cuts. Just let them do their thing. This early scene with Gene Hackman and Denzil has a slight discomfort about it, which goes on to set up their relationship throughout the movie, like when Hackman's busting his balls about nuclear weapons and all this sort of stuff. And it's just great to have a war movie that isn't about just like fight, bomb, win. It's so much deeper than that. It's so much more thought-provoking than that. The whole thing of should they have bombed Japan? Brilliant. And like you don't quite know what they're going to say and what their opinions are going to be, and then he comes out with the true enemy is war itself. I mean, that is about as deep as they are in that sub at times.
It is very true. No, it's great. It is great. The dialogue in this film does win it for me. And importantly, there's silences between the dialogues where they just sort of stare at each other, or like I don't know, he's handing over the keys at one point, he's taking off his neck, and he just sort of looks at him like he doesn't break on to something, and gives him those keys from around his neck, and there's just those silences which say as much as the dialogue does. It's a real matching of wits between two juggernauts of two different schools. A military hardened military guy and a guy from Harvard who's studied the art of war, kind of thing.
I love what you say about the gaps in the dialogue. Like, I feel that is, again, another modern movie thing, is like they just don't have enough pacing and pauses and allow for those moments to just simmer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's always, you've got to fill the gaps now, it seems. There's always got to be something going on, but yeah, gaps are everything. I'd like to make two special mentions to some cast members. As I saw in the credits, a Sean O'Brien as phone talker. And Mark Christopher Lawrence as leading culinary specialist Ronno. These are two credits I aspire to have on my IMDb profile when I grow up.
Phone talker sounds like a movie.
I know,
phone
right?
Talker. Excellent. The visuals and the VFX and stuff.
Yeah.
First thing I'm going to say about this is lighting wise, there are some beautiful night silhouette shots of Gene Hackman walking along and the soldiers lined up for action, and some beautiful submarine shots underwater. I looked into this because I was sort of so impressed, and I feel like some of the times these older effects stand up better than their modern counterparts, just for not standing out as being CGI. Yep. And what they did was they had practical miniatures with really small amounts of CG for things like torpedoes and wash. But it's done so well. The explosion of that Russian sub is stunning, and that, like, the incredible implosion effect and everything like that, just, it blew my mind how good it was. Like, what do you think of the action scenes in particular and stuff? Because submarine warfare, when you have these torpedoes, it always makes me laugh because it's kind of like slow motion action.
I know, you really feel it, because it takes a while for the torpedoes to get to you and things like that. You're absolutely right when you mention the CGI in this, or the lack thereof it. And I went looking for a sort of a behind the scenes kind of thing, and what I could find is it was a company called Dream Quest Images, with a company responsible for filming the sub implosion. And from what I can see from the behind the scenes show that I found, they shot like 2 model submarines, and I'd say models, they're quite big, and they're on rigs on a sort of a sound stage with like loads of haze, and they're sort of one's moving this way, one's moving that way, as you can see in the film. And then the other one was filmed underwater with the torpedoes and stuff actually being launched. They are real torpedoes, or model torpedoes being launched. And there's a brilliant shot of basically they're launching these torpedoes into a net. And the net's going to stop them, kind of thing. And there's a couple of divers beside this net, and one's sort of veering off, and the diver is swimming after it, and just sort of like some sort of underwater goalkeeper, and he's sort of jumping for it. Well, not jumping, but jump like this to catch this model before it, I don't know, shoots off, kind of thing. Obviously, not real, but they're I must be about 2 meters long, judging by the so that's,
what, the torpedo?
So that's 6 foot. Yeah, about that. I think they're not small things. I'll send you the link because it's hilarious, but it's actually quite interesting, how they did it. And the actual explosion of the submarine was the model. They blew it up underwater, and the guy said it took all of a second to blow up, so they slowed it right down. But that is a real submarine that they built, put it underwater, and then blew it up and filmed it. So that's why it looks so real, and it goes back to what we've said about SFX getting really inventive and creative, because you didn't have mega amounts of CGI or the power we've got today, or Unreal Engine to create these things. They had to physically do it. They had to build the models and blow them up to make it look realistic.
Do more of that, Hollywood.
Oh God, please do. It looks amazing. It does. I was blown away by that, and I'm glad you brought it up. And it's the same with the set. They built the whole set on a gimbal. On a massive gimbal, like you see on those aircraft simulators. Yeah, they've got the sort of struts and things. And there's a guy there with a remote control, and so when they dive, they're really diving, and they're, when they're holding on, that's because they're all at 45 degrees on this massive gimbal rig with the cameramen and everything strapped in. It's incredible, absolutely amazing.
Oh man, that makes me miss old school DVD extras, because I feel like it's the sort of thing that would be on that.
Yeah, totally. Totally. Yeah, I'll send you the link to that YouTube video. It's fascinating.
Yeah, do. That'd be brilliant. There's a little bit in this. We get the text that says like day 1, middle of the Mediterranean, or something like that. Yeah. And it's exactly the same as they go on to use in Austin Powers a couple of years later, like with the same beep sounds for each letter. It's we just done Austin Powers, so it was in my head. Yeah, it's the same typewriter. Spot on. The only other thing I want to mention on visual effects and stuff is you can see there's a couple of shots when they're in comms, and we look back at them almost from the point of view of the screen, kind of thing, and they have very clear and defined green text on their faces, which is meant to be the reflection. You just wouldn't get. So they must have just been projecting that kind of image right on their faces.
I guess so. Yeah. Absolutely. I love a good submarine movie, and we discussed this in our discussion that we had when we filmed it live for our Patreon subscribers. I don't know, maybe it's something about being locked in close quarters with sweaty men that really does it for me. Yeah, with a load of seamen. Joking aside,
I've seen your search history. That's true.
Right. So, but sweat. Everyone was sweating all the time, and I don't know if that if that's sprayed on, if that's part of makeup, or if it was really hot filming. But genuinely, on submarines, do they not have air conditioning, or how is it controlled? Is it really hot down there? I would have thought it was quite cold, because you're in a presumably steel, long thing under the sea, which is relatively
very cold.
I mean, I don't know, probably 15 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit for our American listeners.
15 degrees, you reckon?
I reckon
200 meters or whatever they are.
Yeah, well, maybe. Do you know what? I have no idea. I'm just pulling figures out of my arse. What I mean is, it's not warm. I want to know how, what the deal is with the sweat. Everyone was sweating constantly sweating.
It looks good though.
Oh, it definitely looks good. Yeah.
Music and sound effects.
Yes.
Music here is by Hans Zimmer, who won a Grammy for the main theme, and I assume there's a character in this called Zimmer, so I assume that's named after him. But I've got a quick question for you before we talk about the music. Yep. What would you say is Hans Zimmer's biggest musical achievement? Doesn't matter what you think. The answer is either you could have had being in the Buggles music video for Video Killed the Radio Star, or composing Going for Gold TV theme tune.
Going for Gold?
Did you not know he did Going
I did
for
not
Gold?
know. I had no idea.
Going for gold.
I genuinely no idea.
Hans Zimmer.
Wow. Was that in his early days when he was looking for work? Oh, it's epic. The whole soundtrack is epic, as only Zimmer knows how to do. Lots of marching snares, which seem to sum up military music really, really well.
This is kind of before, I feel like this is much more traditional Hollywood movie music compared to the wacky, inventive stuff he does now with razor blades on violins and things for Batman and whatever.
I didn't know he did that.
Oh yeah, really crazy things he does now.
Okay.
When that kitchen fire starts,
Yeah.
we get what I think of as being some very definitive military movie music. Like this, to me, must be one of the earlier examples of that kind of, you hear military music, you can hear it. Why is it that early? I mean, it's 1995. I don't know.
Yeah.
It is iconic. Like, it's recognisable. You go, that's a military movie song.
I know. I mean, I think it's the snares, the rapid snare. When I hear a military thing, you always hear the snares, the rolling of drums on those sort of marching snares. I always think that's very military inspired.
It's the music that you get now on all sorts of like military video games, like Call of Duty and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So they were sort of ripped off of this kind of thing, but I don't know if Zimmer did it first or not.
I don't know if you noticed that the hymn "Eternal Father, Strong to Save," or as it's often known for those in peril on the sea, was there. You hear it a lot in Cornwall because it's often sung by the male voice choirs. We used to sing it a lot in choir at school. It's often sung at burials at sea, things like that. It was written by William Whiting, who was a chorister from Winchester, and he wrote it after he got caught in a violent storm that nearly drowned him, which is quite fascinating. Back in the 1800s, early 1800s. But it was taken by Zimmer and it was readapted and composed by Zimmer, so it was sort of reimagined. But it comes on a couple of times in the film. It's like, oh, I really know this one. It's a great tune.
What you just said there, no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, fine. No,
don't have a clue what any of those hymns or things were.
Those in peril on the sea. Does that not ring any bell? Yeah, right. It's quite famous. Yeah, no, that's it. That's all you're getting.
Oh.
I'm not being paid to do this.
Pay more to hear the rest of that on Patreon.
Yes, I will record a full version of that hymn because I've sung it many times.
Is that when, like, during the action sequences, when the Russians launch torpedoes and stuff? I know he brings in like Russian voices and things, which make it a bit more intimidating. Is that thing, or is that different?
No, that's very different. No. That's a full on, choral chorister male voice choir sort of thing. Yeah,
sure. And I don't know if you thought this, but when they destroy that sub, the Russian sub, I thought it got a bit Pirates of the Caribbean.
I didn't know.
That sort of.
He did one of them, didn't he, or a couple of the Pirates of the Caribbean? Did he? I think so. Are
you saying he's recycling his own music?
Well, I mean, John Williams. You know when John Williams is making a soundtrack, you know it from a mile off. Doesn't matter if it's Lost Ark or if it's Star Wars. Ding ding.
I heard some of the some themes that people said were influenced his Star Wars music. They are quite similar. Let's not talk about it. Can I jump to some things we want to talk about?
Let's.
First thing I want to talk about, the kitchen fire.
Yes.
I know this is a story point, but it never really made sense for me that in the middle of a movie about nuclear weapons and World War III, there's like a random epic fire that we never really get explained from a bloke sort of firing up a barbecue in the galley.
I think it's Tony Scott, though. I think it's just Tony Scott being Tony Scott. Like, let's have a big fire in the galley. Go. He's got his cigar. It's like, I want a fire in a galley. Go.
And then they decide that's the time to do the weapons test, which is a key point, I know, for the sort of the debate about the movie. But then this officer dies from the fire, and you just think, you've gone to war to battle the Russians in World War III, and you die from a kitchen fire. It's not what you want, is it?
What a way to go.
That kitchen fire for me, I don't know, just didn't make sense. Even with his explanation from his character's motivation point of view, irresponsible.
I liked the scene. I thought it was well filmed. I thought it, had all the dramatic action to it. I guess I didn't question it. I didn't really question it. I didn't think like, well, that's a bit of a weird plot. I just thought it was, fire on board. It's a thing that could happen, I suppose.
Yeah, for me, it's a bit like, how do we get some drama on a sub?
Yeah.
Fire. Let's have a kitchen fire. was a bit random.
So I was trying to think about being on a submarine and actually looking at spending months on this submarine. I was on a tiny turboprop plane last week, going to some really, really tiny island, and we had mental turbulence, right? And baggage was falling out of the overhead lockers. The full shooting match of a film kind of thing. The only thing that didn't happen was the oxygen masks didn't come down because I don't think they had any, right? And I genuinely thought this might be it. Right, and I've got no control of it. Now,
God.
I do dangerous shit for a living, day in, day out. I do diving, climbing, caving. I do all of it. This is what I do, and I know and I love. But I've always got control of what I do. You can stop and you can bail out. You can't do that in a sub. Very much like on the plane. And I was sitting on this plane thinking, like, oh yeah, I wonder if it's like that being on a submarine. You've got no control, and you just sit there. And I think that takes balls of steel to do that. Imagine being the guy that's counting down the meters of the torpedo that's coming towards you. It's like, that's 200 meters away, 150 meters away, that's 100 meters away, and it's just like, we're all going to die, but I'm just going to keep telling you.
It's like counting down your own death.
I know, like, you're all right with that, mate. Wow.
We're both divers, so when they were talking about the depths that they were at,
yeah,
I just found that quite horrifying. Because knowing that if you were to get out of the sub, what would happen to you?
Yes.
And how this sub manages to maintain any kind of security and safety.
Structural integrity.
That's the word I was looking for.
I know, it's nuts. But the only trouble is they were all talking in fucking feet all the time. Especially when they're going to the crush zone and everyone's sweating and you've got the creaking and everyone's being silent and the sweat's dripping off the forehead. It's like, oh God, I don't think I could do that. If you're listening to this and you've worked on a submarine, good for you. Absolutely. Yeah.
Good for you. Good. Official Rewind Classic Movies message.
Yes. What about you? You got anything else?
Yeah, I was going to talk about accuracies.
Yeah.
Because
or lack thereof.
Ended up on a Reddit. Well, exactly, yeah. I ended up on a Reddit thread about military and submarine inaccuracies. And some of the things like the fire drill got a lot of hate. A lot of the uniforms were wrong. The dog being on board was ridiculous. Apparently subs don't have these grated decks that you see or all these flashing warning lights. There was no bilge bay to seal and kill someone, and the fact they train for these kind of disagreements that they have between the XO and the captain.
Really?
It just wouldn't be a thing, apparently. Yeah.
Wow.
Which kills the premise of the movie. But
it totally does.
That's kind of the point, that it could be crazy. But the biggest issue for one real life submariner that I saw in the chat, and this will come to your point, is the movie doesn't convey the misery of being in a sub.
Wow. Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, I could imagine it being really miserable.
One person said, if Crimson Tide had a military advisor, he was either drunk or an Airedale, or quite possibly both. I googled what Airedale means, and it's a dog.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know what they meant there. But someone did say they kept a pet fish on board, which I found interesting, because one of my big things was like, how have they got a goldfish tank?
Yeah, right.
Anyway, but there are endless lists on IMDb and elsewhere of plot holes, continuity errors, mistakes and goofs and stuff, but I don't want to go into them because, one, it's a movie, not a historical document, and things like that happen, and two, it's fucking boring, isn't it? Let's talk about something else.
Absolutely. Let's. I love all the different sayings that they have, like, for example, down bubble 2%, forward rudder, spin up screws 1 through 6, aye.
Yeah, I did a lot of Googling.
and then the next guy repeats it. He'll say, down bubble 2%, forward rudder, spin up screws 1 through 6, aye. And then another guy over there will repeat it. And it'll just go like around this 4 or 5 times around the helm or the con. You have the con, I have the con, you've got the con, I have the con, I. And it's just really fun. It's like this echo chamber of people saying,
is it necessary?
Oh, it is though, because it's great. It's great fun.
Either like put a radio in or shout a bit louder.
Yeah.
But I quite like how there's a lot of military language in this and acronyms that are never explained, and the filmmakers just trust that the viewers don't need to know those specific things, and just gives a flavour of being on board more than anything. Or
maybe the filmmakers don't actually know what any of it means, and they're just hoping not too many military-minded people are going to go, well, that's a load of bollocks.
Oh dear. What's just dawned on me is, if you're watching this in 1995, you can't just Google what they mean.
That's a very good point. There wasn't Reddit or anything like that to get
Let me
mad
get
at.
out my copy of Encarta 95.
Oh, do you remember that? I used to have that on CD-ROM.
Classic,
Encarta 95. That is so classic. I also noticed when they weren't in the submarine, when they were getting ready to go, rain, lots and lots of rain. Again. And I reckon it was probably the same company that did Blade Runner and Seven were drafted in. It's like, we need some rain, boys.
Charge you by the millimetre. Now, the end of the movie. I've put my little note for this is end of the world. It ends. God, we thought the beginning was relevant. It ends with text that says, as of 1996, the final firing authority was no longer with submarine captains, but... And what could be better than the submarine captain and safer? The President of the United States. In any other time in history apart from 2025, that would have been a comforting and sensible protocol.
Oh my God.
Fucking hell.
Oh my God. So the final, yeah, oh God.
What did you think about the end of the movie in terms of how their relationship ends and the court scene and all that kind of stuff?
I suppose it had to end like that. It was interesting that the judge...
Close to the microphone, darling.
Sorry,
I'm wondering. Forgot you're on a podcast.
I know, right? The judge or the court martial kind of thing, or the hearing or whatever they're having, they both say, you're both right and you're both wrong, and this jury, this court will, forever be debating this issue. Essentially that is the case. They both acted correctly and they both acted incorrectly, which is nuts. They made up and he handed over his... I don't know if I liked that Hollywood ending where he goes, oh yes, I realise that, I now need to retire and pass on to the new guys, which, it does make sense. It does. He's an old captain now and it's time for the newer people to take over and the more studied people that went to Harvard and all that sort of stuff. And I'm handing over and I've given my full recommendation for you to take on the sub. I don't know if I really liked that. I kind of wanted him to still be like a not miserable, but like, a ratchety old captain. And instead they sort of make up and shake hands and I don't know. I don't know if I really enjoyed that particular ending, but that's just me.
I think people would have imagined that the ending would have been Denzil is the hero, basically, and he gets congratulated and all that kind of thing. I like that they did this mature thing of going, look, boys, you're both wrong. I thought that was a mature step and a mature story choice. I didn't like the fact that they've gone from about to kill each other to we got through it. Well done. Have a good day.
What a trip that was.
It was intense. Then to not very intense. Favorite scenes and lines. First thing I'll volunteer for this is early on when they're just going out into the sub, and he gives him his first cigar. Hackman gives Denzil his first cigar and he says, don't like it too much. They're more expensive than drugs. I thought was some nice little bit of humour that's needed at that point in the story. Yeah.
I suppose they have to get them all imported from Cuba. I like the bit where, again, it's another light-hearted bit. And he's reprimanding one of the guys who's either started a fist fight in the cabin, which I'd imagine you've got to shut down pretty damn quick on a submarine. It's not like you can go and walk it off anywhere. And, he's saying like they had a disagreement because they were disagreeing about a comic book or something, as far as I understand. And he says to him about the Silver Surfer and the Kirby Silver Surfer versus the Mobius Silver Surfer. But he turns around and says, but everyone knows that the Kirby Silver Surfer is the one true Silver Surfer, which I had to look up because I don't know what any of that means, but apparently it's a comic, two different types of comic book design or something like that. But I felt it was a funny, light-hearted bit.
I've got a little note here that I made called Captain Obvious. At one point, Denzil shouts, "Get propulsion back online as soon as possible." The sort of thing you don't imagine needs to be said. I imagine he probably was trying to get the propulsion back online
all right,
as soon
I'll
as
get
possible.
to that then, Governor.
Yeah. But I wasn't going to bother.
I was waiting for that order. I'm just standing here okay then. Yeah.
And while we're on ridiculous things, I watched this with my partner who was seeing the underwater submarine shots. And she went, it's funny there's no windows.
Did she really say that?
Yeah. I did tell her I was going to mention it.
It's true though. I quite like that. Why is there no windows? I mean, it'd be nice.
I assume it's a pressure thing.
I guess it must be. It must be. But it'd be nice to look out.
Because I do find it amazing how they know where to go.
That's a good point, actually. I suppose they've got sonar.
We've come up with something here that will get hold of the Navy, tell them to put some windows in the front.
Yeah. So you can look where you're going, you know?
Sorted it.
When Gene Hackman gets on the horn, I don't know, they're going for a run.
Sounds slightly inappropriate, mate.
Eric gets on the horn, mate.
Tight.
And he's... God. He gets on the blower, and because Denzil Washington just come up to him and said, the morale's a little bit low with the men, and he gets on the blower and he basically says, "This is the captain speaking. The XO thinks that morale's a little bit low." And basically like, "Get back to fucking work," or something ridiculous. It's like, ooh, mate, all right. Yeah,
savage.
It is brutal, really brutal. Another thing I noticed is like, how many of those because they did the nuclear drill a few times, and they always run off to that little safe, open the little safe, get out those things which they sort of snap open, and then take the code out. How many of those have they got? Because they seem to use quite a few of them. There only ever seem to be like a couple or three in the safe. Like when the actual nuclear thing comes and they open the safe up, it's like, oh shit, we've run out.
Talking about those codes and those messages, when they get that fragment, this is a key scene for me. They get that fragment and it changes everything. Hackman raises his voice for the first time and he's relieved of command. And actually, I thought about this, that Hackman is so restrained. And when we were talking earlier about how people are overacting in more modern movies and stuff, the restraint for him to get to this point in the movie, having not raised his voice or anything, incredible. So that it's more powerful when he does. And we're like on the edge of nuclear war, and the biggest tension is two middle-aged blokes arguing over a rule book.
Yeah.
It's so well done that suddenly becomes so tense. Hackman tells him he's not ready to make these tough decisions and he's taken away. And then later Denzil gives that order to seal the flooding bay and kill his own men in there. And it doesn't need like big grand action scenes because the drama is so human. And between Denzil, Gene Hackman and Tony Scott, they managed to just make this incredibly something movie that just makes you want to watch it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was terribly explained.
It was terribly explained.
Please do a better job than me.
I totally understand what you mean.
Gripping was the word I was looking for.
Yeah, gripping. It's like the radio fixing guy. He's there for,
Poor fucker.
I know. And he's got his soldering. And again, he's wiping the sweat, constantly sweating. Everyone's sweating their tits off. And he's constantly wiping the sweat off his thing while trying to like solder really sensitive electronics, And he's constantly soldering. And it gets to the point where at one point in the movie, it's like everything's riding on him because Gene Hackman sat there and they're talking about horses now because he's given him 3 minutes or 2 minutes or whatever. He's got 3 minutes. And they're just sat opposite each other. It's like, if I'll give you 3 minutes before we launch the nuclear missiles, and they're sat there and it's suddenly the tension's gone. And it's all about the radio guy. The radio guy's got to get that radio back online. If he doesn't, those nuclear missiles are going to be launched. And he's there and you're really like, go on, radio guy. Go on, solder, go on, get the... And they're tuning it.
Your radio guy, fix the radio.
I know. Oh, God, soldering iron. Fuck, the sweat. Oh, my God, I'm sweating everywhere. I can't see. The sweat, the radio. Oh, my God. But it's real.
Yes. One of the tensest moments for me are when they've all got that mutiny and stuff and Hackman is trying to get back power. And he starts threatening to kill the crew. He's holding the gun to their head. And he's like, 3, 2, 1. Because you're watching this going, fuck, is he going to do this?
Yeah.
He's a man on the edge.
Yeah.
And you've gone from the start of the movie where you're like, Gene Hackman, is this older kind of experienced guy, to now, is he just going to be a serial killer?
Yeah.
To get what he wants?
Yeah.
No, brilliant performance.
And it asks the question, has he gone mad? Or is he fulfilling his absolute duty as a captain that he will launch those missiles because that is what he's obliged to do as a captain. He's got to do that. So if he has to, shoot crew to make it happen, that's something he's got to do because at the end of the day, Denzil Washington had to sacrifice 1 or 2 of his guys in the bilge locker or whatever it was. He effectively gave the orders for them to be killed. So Gene Hackman's doing a similar kind of thing, and it's like, God, yeah, you watch it and he's like, he's gone bloody mad. But has he? it makes you think.
We're going to do some trivia, but we're running out of time, so I'm going to fly through some of it. Tarantino was a contributor on this. He came in as a kind of script doctor on the back of Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs, just to punch the script up a bit.
No way.
He brought in some of those pop culture references. You mentioned Silver Surfer. I didn't think of that, but that's probably one of his. He had a row with Denzil that lasted for years because they fell out over some of the dialogue that Tarantino wanted to add later on when they're talking about the horses, funnily enough. Denzil didn't like that Tarantino wanted to put in some rather racial dialogue, apparently. Tarantino was never officially credited for whatever work he did. They eventually buried the hatchet after not that long ago, 10 years ago maybe, and his daughter went on to work with Tarantino on Django Unchained.
Right.
So there's a little Tarantino, little mini story in there.
How about that?
The other thing I was going to mention in trivia, we talked about the Navy and how they were involved early on with that slightly different script. Now, they made those changes they didn't like, probably because they didn't make the Navy look very good. And so they refused to cooperate with the filming, which meant the production company couldn't get key shots of things like the submarine submerging. And so there's a bit here I'm going to read. I think I found it somewhere. It might have been Wikipedia. I can't remember. Open quotes. After checking to ensure there was no law against filming naval vessels, the producers waited at the submarine base at Pearl Harbor until a submarine was put to sea. After a submarine, coincidentally the real USS Alabama, left port, they pursued her in a boat and helicopter, filming as they went. End quotes. Now, the rumour is that they paid someone to tip them off about the sub's movements and say they were on hand ready to film it when it happened. And I read somewhere else that the Navy realised they were filming as they were going out and asked them to stop. I don't know whether that was some sort of loud hailer or a radio or what, but when they didn't stop filming, that's when the submarine submerged, which is the shot that the film crew wanted anyway.
So
I also
cool.
heard the French Navy allowed them to film on one of their subs. Don't know if that's true or not.
Wow, that's quite funny. I love the fact that they're just like chasing after an actual submarine, just filming it. Like, yeah, we're gonna, that's totally legal.
Brilliant, genius idea.
I love it. What are we going to rank this one?
Well, I'm going first, am I?
Yeah.
I said earlier I went into this with no nostalgia, no experience of it, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot. Had a good time. However, I don't really want to go and watch it again anytime soon. Masterful performances from everyone involved. Interesting movie, thought-provoking movie. It's not an S. Could give it an A. I feel that would be generous, though, compared to some of the other movies that I would watch again or have enjoyed over the years. So I'm going to give it a very solid B.
Yep. I'll see that.
I made that up on the spot. That wasn't planned.
No.
I just went with my heart.
It's a solid action film, which is absolutely brilliantly executed for what it is. As I touched on earlier, I don't think it's overly memorable. I think the performances are stunning. I think the sets are stunning. I think they did a brilliant job with blowing submarines up underwater. I think everyone did an excellent job, from the sound guy to Hans Zimmer to the director to everyone that was involved with it, to make a brilliant, brilliant movie. I'll probably forget about it. Well, now that I've discussed it, I'm probably not going to forget about it. Like so many of Tony Scott's films that you forget about and watch a year later. I don't think, like you, I can give it an A. So I'm also going to give it a solid B.
Oh, we agree again. This is very
We
rare.
do, and I ummed and ahed with this because I was floating between. I can't give it an S. It's not absolutely outstanding in any way, shape, or form, not at all. And I just don't think it quite warrants an A for some of the films that I have graded an A, which are very, very good. But it is a great film. I can't knock it. I really enjoyed it. It's a B, absolutely, solid B.
We made a point in one of our podcasts recently where we said we loved everything about the movie, all the technicalities, all the performances, all that kind of stuff, but just didn't really gel with the subject matter. And I do love military movies. I'm a big Tom Clancy fan, all that kind of stuff. But it's not entirely my bag to choose to watch again. I like Hunt for Red October. Not going to overly watch that often. Great movie, though.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is, I do like a good submarine movie. I mean, I like U-571, Hunt for Red October, Crimson Tide. Did
you know in U-571, John Bon Jovi gets his head decapitated by a submarine hatch?
I did know that he was in it, only when I watched it recently again, and I said, bloody hell, that's John Bon Jovi, which is quite funny.
In his acting era. Now, before we go, we've got some lovely people on our Patreon, and so we mentioned that we were doing this film, and we've had some comments. So I thought we'd take a moment to read some out.
Okay,
Yes.
go for it.
So Simon on Patreon says,
Hello, Simon.
S tier. S tier for Simon. It's
way.
a perfect film. Unusually snappy dialogue for an action film, but I think all kinds of kudos have to be given for the magnificent Tony Scott for creating one of the most oppressively hot and frankly sweaty films ever. As an ensemble thriller, it's hard to match to. I warn you that any criticism of this, or really anything by Tony Scott, will be met with a furiously worded email.
Oh, God. Simon from Patreon, thank you for joining us on this journey. And I understand now if you leave this journey, because I have basically just... Well, I haven't said anything bad about Tony Scott. He makes fantastic action films. Absolutely fantastic action films, just like James Bay.
Michael Bay does not make fantastic action films. Can we...
Doesn't he? He makes massive, huge
moments.
budget. Yeah, I know he's made some crap ones as well. But he makes. Yeah. Anyway, interesting you give an S tier. I'm glad that people are getting involved with our ranking system as well. I mean, that's really, really cool to see. I'm glad you noticed the sweat. I'm not the only one who noticed lots of sweaty men. I really do want to know if it's really that hot on a submarine or not.
There's another message from Kat. Do you want to read that one, or do you want me to do it?
I can do it. Let me scroll down and find it. Kat on Patreon said, I do like this film. I love the story, the tussle between two strong characters, superb acting by the whole cast, not just Gene and Denzil. But for the love of God, if you're going to make a film about the military, get a specialist consultant in. Scott did the same in Top Gun. So many technical errors. Now that's interesting to know. It'd be interesting to know if having inside knowledge about an industry, not necessarily the military, can take the edge of an otherwise stunning bit of cinematic experience.
Cinematic excellence, she says there, but sure.
Sorry, you're absolutely right. I cannot read. It's funny that you say that, Kat. It's when I see a film with some sort of scuba or climbing or mountaineering, the mistakes that they make drive me up the bloody wall. So I could imagine for anyone that served time on a submarine, or indeed in the Air Force, or the Navy Force, the Navy Air Force for Top Gun, the Navy Force would be quite annoying. Yeah, no, it's fair enough. This is great that these comments are coming in from people. I love it. I was not aware really what Patreon was, and I'm still not entirely sure what it is. But it's really lovely, and thank you so much for getting in touch. And I love the fact that you're ranking them. That's really cool. So thank you for...
It is nice.
Yeah.
Right, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time with a movie from 1980. And AJ, I hope you're going to give us a clue.
It's a film about a charmingly clueless quarterback who gets swept up in an intergalactic battle to save Earth from a madman with a fabulous wardrobe, all while delivering cheesy one-liners and occasionally trying to look heroic. But anyway, please leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Rewind Classic Movies. If you want to drop us an email, it's rewindclassicmovies@gmail.com.
In the meantime, if you want to listen to more things about Crimson Tide, Christ, no idea what I'm going to include in this. I'll apparently be doing a fast forward episode to look at what happened after this movie came out, which includes, I have no idea. So that's apparently out next week. Goodbye.
Fantastic. Goodbye.